Hello, welcome to the workshop. Today we have an update on the sabot project for the Dreyse needle rifle. For those of you who remember, probably about 2 years ago now, I attempted to find a cheap and fast way to make sabots for the Dreyse needle rifle for the M55 cartridge, which shoots this lovely egg-shaped bullet, the Langblei. And I've used various materials. I used some wood rod, I used some MDF, and the winner was this Delrin sabot, which from the ones I recovered, they appear to be at least reusable once, which is already a bonus, and they're quick to turn out on the lathe with a standard 16mm rod. I don't even need to trim it down, just need to cut it and bore out a cavity. So this was great. This is one possibility. However, of course, many of you commented and said, hey, this is a perfect project for a 3D printer. Absolutely. You were absolutely right, but that is one rabbit hole I personally don't want to do. I've got enough going on my plate. I don't want to have another thing to tinker with. I'd rather leave that to people who know what they're doing. So I was lucky enough that Whiskey Tango Fondue was, he was also a shooter, so he knows what I want, what I need, and in discussion with him, we cooked up a couple of designs using different materials. This is what these little colored groups are, and we're going to see how they shoot downrange. So there's 4 different materials and 4 slightly different variations of the sabot design, and we'll see if any of them work. Hopefully one of them will, because if it does, then they can be printed off in batches quite quickly. I've also got all these paper tubes. That's what I've been doing. Today has been a horrible, miserable day with winter coming back in full swing with snow and everything. So I've been doing lots and lots of arts and crafts, making closed-end paper tubes. So I'll just quickly bring the camera around and you can see all the different designs and where it comes from and all that. So just a little reminder, the original sabot is made of a long strip of paper, about 3 meters, which was wetted and then rolled up around a mandrel and then put through successive forming dies to get the final shape. Now the modern equivalent is like this. You get card, you wind it on a mandrel with glue, let it set, and then you put the cap on the base. This works, but it's extremely tedious, and I also find that it's very hard to get consistent diameter on the outside. I shove them through a forming die myself at the end just to make sure, but even so, humidity has its effects on it, of course, before, during and after you make it, and sometimes the bullet still gets trapped, gets gripped by it, and they don't separate at the muzzle as they should, and then it just flies off sideways, and it's quite having this shaped bullet going straight through the target is not an uncommon occurrence for Dreyse shooters. So yeah, this is the sort of the standard go-to method, DIY, lengthy and boring to do and with questionable results. So this was the design that seemed to work for me. So this is just Delrin, and this has been just milled out on the lathe, bored out to the shape, the taper shape of the bullet. There's a little pokey hole there so I can poke the primer out once it's done. I'm using Burden primers, by the way. I highly recommend them if you can get them. It gives a nice powerful bang and is really, really reliable. And the needle can't go through this, so it has to get a good strike on it because of the steel cup. So the 4 designs I've got, and I'll show them with this one, most visible. So the first one is straight up cylinder, like on the white one. Then there is a sort of slightly tapered or sort of waisted one here with a slight skirt on the back. This is inspired from a German product, injection molded sabot, that was briefly available and then disappeared. Sadly, this one was for an M47 bullet, which is a very odd thing, being half spherical and half pointy. So yeah, unfortunately, it don't fit. But it inspired me because it's got this little skirt here, like an air pellet. I'll give it a try. So we've incorporated that design into this, and then to replicate the originals, which have a little split, 90 degrees to each other at the front. I've done it so for the straight walled one and also for the tapered one. Now, why this is there? Several theories. One is that it was so that it actually crimps down on the bullet as it goes through the bore. It's forced down to get a good grip on it so that the spin is transmitted. Another one is that it helps also separation at the muzzle. So as it spins out of the muzzle, the wings, the petals here will fan out and separate, help separation. Another thing that's occurred to me while I've been playing with these is it perhaps allows you to get a consistent seating depth of the bullet each time, because you've got a little bit of give here, and it means you can push down, and there is a flat bottom there, so there is something you can push down so that all of them will be the same. So yeah, probably all those three are why it's there. So we've included it in the other design as well. There's a little pinhole here so I can poke out the primer, and these have been sized for the Burden rifle caps. There, fits like a glove. So this is the four materials that we have. We have some TPU here in this racy orange. We have some PET G actually here in yellow. We have some carbon fiber reinforced nylon here in black, and we have some polycarbonate here in green. We'll see which ones perform the best. My money is on the TPU. We'll see. That would be the best. Apparently it's the easiest and the cheapest to print, and it really is coming out pretty well. Whereas the other ones, the forming is a little more difficult. There's a little bit more work to tidy them up afterwards. So fingers crossed that this one comes out top. Okay, we're at the range. I've got my trusty M62 Beck infantry rifle and my whole host of ammunition. We're going to start with the cylindrical sabot, then go to the slitted cylindrical, then do the skirted and the slitted skirted sabot, and hopefully we'll get a clear winner. Remember, we're trying to see if it's worth it at all, or whether we can beat the accuracy of conventional round ball, which is the ultimate aim, because all this might be for naught if you can just reload very easily and very quickly with round ball. Okay, first TPU. Seven at 1 o'clock, nice round hole. A little bit higher, but still a round hole. So let's try PET G. The two materials, they both shoot a little bit high, more or less in the same area. I'm aiming 6 o'clock hold, something that's easy that I can reproduce. So far, the results are good. Okay, next we have nylon. Okay, nylon is a little bit higher, a round hole, but much bigger. So I think sabot and bullet have gone together all the way down, and I can even see the rifling marks in the hole. So this is interesting. Okay, that one did separate fine. Same area as the others. Okay, last one, polycarbonate. Alright, that's another one that's gone down range with the sabot. Still in the same group. And that one's wanged way off out of the group. Polycarbonate doesn't seem to be behaving. Alright, so while we trot to the target to put a new one on and show you how it's done, I'm going to keep an eye out, see if I can find any sabots that have fallen off on the way. Now the colour should help, but there's no guarantees. I don't know how far they're going to travel. The grass is luckily not too long. No luck finding the sabot, but here we are at the target. This is the polycarbonate. You can see here, 90 degrees, you can see the slightly wider. So this is where it's been taking the rifling fully, but not separating, so that's no good. And the second one did separate and was somewhere in there. That was the polycarbonate one that didn't separate. Don't think there's a rifling imprint on this one, but the rest are nice and round, which is good. That's the other polycarbonate one, so that's like a flyer there. But they're all kind of in the same area regardless of the material, which is good. There we go, a much smaller group than before. Remember, I'm still just keeping my aim here for consistency. This was the polycarbonate that went sideways by the look of it. Familiar site for Langblei. But the others, was pretty tidy. This was the TPU, polycarbonate, the nylon was those two, and the PET was these two. So the closest was PET. But I have found a TPU one. So with the slits there, you can see, and you can see how deep the rifling is. Well, this is definitely usable once more. This was the skirted, unslitted sabots. These are the two nylon ones. You can see again the rifle engraving. These two were the PET, and that was the TPU. So not impressed at all. Actually found one of the TPU ones. You can see the skirt there has been munched, and you can see it's still engraving even in the skirted bit here, the narrow bit. So this is how deep the rifling is on these things. This one couldn't be used again. So after all that, the winner is... And it is, of course, the slit cylinder, the one that most closely resembles the original. What a surprise! So taking the results as a whole, it seems that the idea of a 3D printed sabot is validated. Out of all those shots, there was only one where the bullet, there's something happened with separation, it tumbled and it went through sideways, which is statistically substantially less than I've had happen with my painstakingly made paper sabots. Even the ones that didn't separate went through the target face first, so it left a big hole, or in the case of the split ones you had these nice little tidy iron crosses. So that's a really good sign. As the tests went by, it became clear that the polycarbonate and the nylon were no good. I think nylon is simply too tough. It speeds through, but that was the one that caused the most problems with lack of separation, and yeah, I think it just grips the bullet and doesn't let go. So that had to go. The polycarbonate, I think what's happening there is that it is shattering. I did find a couple of scraps, and it was just sort of ribbons of the stuff scattered in the grass. It was green, so it wasn't easy to find. But yeah, I don't think that's surviving going through the bore particularly well. It wasn't so obvious in the sort of traditional shape sabot because there's more material there. But I think the second type, I think that was getting blown to bits as it was travelling through the bore. So those two are gone. So that left me with TPU and PET G. Now TPU, I found two of them here, and from the texture they're a little bit sort of sticky, tacky, which kind of worries me a little. Maybe just a little bit too soft and too elastic. The PET G ones, I didn't find any scraps or anything, so I don't know what's happening to them. But as I said at the beginning of the vid, frankly, I don't really care if they're reusable, if I can find them again in their reusable state. Just the fact that they can be churned out quite rapidly and used and they work, that would be the perfect goal. So I think what we're going to do is go ahead with the PET G, and there's just a little thing I want to do regarding the design, and that is just to put a little bit of an inward chamfer on the forward end of the sabot. That's because when you seat the bullet in, the wings flare out a little, and currently there's a sharp edge around the rim there, which means that what can happen is that once you're loading these things in your little paper tubes that you've made for hours, when you're forcing this thing in, that because it's flared out, it's a little bit wider than the tube you've made, and it might tear your painstakingly made little tubes. So I think just round out the edges of the petals, if you like, so that if they do flare out a little bit, it's not going to damage the paper when you're loading. It won't have any effect on the shooting side. So that's just a little tweak I want to make, and of course that is the advantage of this 3D printing tech, that we can, once we have the main dimensions and shape, we can tweak it left and right. So yeah, next step will be to get Whiskey Tango Fondue to churn me out a good bunch of standard pattern sabots in PET G. Let's see if maybe you can have them a different colour. Hey, have we got any neon whiskey, maybe? And then do some more testing and hopefully get some actual ballistic results, because this was just a validation of concept. They were all, interestingly, they were all printing pretty much in the same area regardless of the type I was using, so that was encouraging. So it means that precision seems to be quite good. I can always fit a little front sight collar to draw down the point of impact, so I can aim 6 o'clock and hit more centrally. So yeah, that's going to be the next project, and maybe also I shall ship off a good bunch to our good friend Brett out there in the US, also fellow Dreyse enthusiast, and maybe he can have a play on the US side as well. But before I sign off, I hope you'll indulge me in a quick little nerdy dive into this rifle. You see, I've mentioned a few times now that this is a Beck modified rifle, and it occurred to me that unless you're a Dreyse aficionado, you probably have absolutely no idea what that means. So let me please plug this vital knowledge gap. You never know, it may come in handy in a pub quiz. So this is the business end of a conventional Dreyse bolt, and you can see there's a central needle guide and there's an annular space around it. The idea being that the cartridge debris gets swirled about in there and mostly gets burnt up, and there's little or no residue that needs to be blown out behind the bullet. And it does work. However, it is quite a substantial void there, and there is quite a large pressure drop, which accounts for some of the rifle's known mediocre range and precision. The Chappy bolt borrows the idea, but the chamber is much smaller. Remember that the Chappy cartridge is actually not supposed to be fully combustible, so there's just a little gap there so gas can get into there, and it helps when blowing out the scraps of cartridge behind the bullet. You follow me so far? Great. Now we come to the sealing aspect. Now, the Dreyse relies on a Morse cone type fitting between the bolt rim and the chamber rim, and the inclined surfaces are forced together by the interaction of an angled surface on the receiver and the angled root of the bolt handle. So the way that the surfaces mate are such that if there is any gas leakage, which quite frankly will occur with very heavy fouling, it is simply blasted forward and not into the shooter's face. Chappy, on the other hand, has a sliding bolt head which has a thick rubber seal behind it. When fired, pressure on the annular part of the bolt head causes the seal to expand, and it is a very, very efficient chamber seal, as long, of course, as the seal is in good condition. Now, of course, there's intense spying between the two countries, so the Prussians become aware of the bolt design immediately and shout, "Verdammt, wie können wir dies auf unsere Verschluss übertragen?" Enter Johannes Beck. He is an inspector working at Spandau, and he does exactly that. French copy the Prussians then copy the French. So he takes the idea of the sliding bolt head with its expanding seal and he adapts it to the Dreyse bolt geometry. So gone is the long needle guide and this funny swirl chamber, and instead we have a bolt face piston, I guess the best way of describing it, behind which is a thick leather gasket. I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. When the bolt is closed, the leather gasket is fully inside the chamber, and when fired, just like with the Chappy, pressure pushes back on the bolt face, causes the leather gasket to expand, and effectively seals the chamber. This solved the sealing issue and also significantly raised the chamber pressure, and that needed then an adjustment to the sights. So we get a new rear sight here, which is very, very similar to the Mauser 71 that comes next. Now, I'm sure all of you will have noticed that the fact that we've got this fantastic new breech seal and this flat bolt face means that probably you're going to get some residue left in the chamber after each shot, and that's the case. You at least get the base disc that's stuck there. And when loading at the time, you just load the next cartridge and it just gets blown out the front. There's nothing in there that's going to obstruct the bore dangerously, but I didn't want to take any chances in terms of interference with these with testing this ammunition, so I flicked out each one with my spare needle. Anyway, back to the story. Coupled to this is a slight redesign of the cartridge itself. We now have the NA cartridge, Zündnadelpatrone neuer Art. The bullet is reduced in diameter down from 13.6 millimeters to 12 millimeters, and it's also made slightly shorter, so it's an overall reduction in weight. The sabot stays the same. Obviously, the cavity for the bullet is adjusted accordingly. So this brings about an overall reduction in the weight of the cartridges, and it allows a soldier to carry 98 cartridges instead of 78 for the same given weight. Now the cartridge also has a reinforced base. It has a sort of double bottom base, and in between the two is a layer of wax paraffin. And the purpose of this was to cool and maybe also possibly slightly clean the needle between shots as it punctures and then gets withdrawn. Now, despite all the benefits that this is producing, this is sort of late 1860s, Prussians will be Prussians, and they embark on a lengthy cost-benefit analysis that starts in March 1870. Now, not only do you have to take the cost of converting the rifles into account, and note the conversion needs a completely new bolt sleeve. It's not just machining the existing bolt face, but also they need to factor in the cost and time of remanufacturing the ammunition, because all the ammunition they have in stock needs to be changed to the new standard. And then, of course, war were declared, and that put a temporary halt on the whole project. Now, according to the Holy Book, according to Wirtgen, at the start of the Franco-Prussian War, there were a few small units that were equipped with the Beck modified rifles, but he also states that they were quickly withdrawn. So the rifles were withdrawn and they were swapped out with standard rifles, so they wouldn't have to deal with two types of ammunition for the infantry. Very, very sensible, these Prussians. That's not to say that the shooting M55 or earlier cartridges are a problem in the Beck modified rifle, but of course the sights have been converted for the new ammunition, so yeah, you would need to have some major Kentucky windage depending on what happens. So this means that pretty much 99.9% of the Beck conversions that you find are actually post-war production, post-war modifications as a stopgap to keep this venerable old rifle going for a couple of years until the Mauser 1871 rifle comes fully into production. So, here endeth the lesson. I just had to plug that gap. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you will follow how this project develops, and thank you for your support, whatever channel you wish to support us on. Don't forget we're also on the app as well as YouTube, and I shall see you then very soon next time. Bye!